organizational psychologist. Melissa, we appreciate you joining us last minute. I know we had been communicating back and forth, but Melissa is going to weigh in on a lot of the questions that folks at home are wondering about. But first, we want to say hello and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Any opportunity to talk about mental health and mental health at work is an opportunity I will not miss. So thank you for having me.
Really appreciate that. So we want to first ask you, what are the biggest mental health challenges that you've seen people experiencing post-shutdown or you're hearing about?
Gosh, I think the question is, what are the challenges people aren't having? So even though the shutdown is finished, that doesn't mean that the impact, the residue that has been put upon people has gone away. So what I have seen a lot, and this is across public and private sector, is really this kind of fatigue residue and exhaustion. And honestly, for some people, what felt like some form of trauma going through something like that you just can't control. And what I'm seeing a lot is really an anticipatory anxiety, kind of that when is the next shoe going to drop, because we know that there will be one, but we just don't know when. So what I've been seeing a lot of is really just feelings of helplessness, that even though the shutdown is over, it really makes people feel like, wow, things like this will happen, and there's really nothing I can do to control it except for to go along for the proverbial ride.
And how can financial instability, like for instance, getting furloughed, like a lot of folks were during the shutdown, add to stress and add to mental health problems?
So if we think about, I'm going to talk just a little bit about, basic psychology for a minute. So if you think about our basic needs not being met, so whether that is, food insecurity, financial insecurity, basic health and safety, if you're not having those basic needs met, like making sure you have a consistent paycheck, you can put food on the table, you can do, basic activities of daily living, the type of anxiety and stress that can add is you can't even measure it, because you can't even pay attention to the typical things of everyday living, because you're wondering how you may be able to afford meals next month. So the type of stress and anxiety that can bring is just really unconscionable levels for people. You can't even think about other stressors because basic needs are not being met. So the long answer is that it really creates high levels of stress, fear, and anxiety for people.
Absolutely. And we want to talk about how people can take care of themselves now. How can they cope post-shutdown?
Honestly, the most simple advice I can give is to focus on the things that you can control and influence, and really thinking about the role of community. Now, the reason I say that is when times get really tough, and there's a lot of things that are out of your control, the basic things to do is focusing on who are the people that I can talk to about this, who are the people that I can hopefully rely on for some form of support, no matter how small that may be, whether it is emotional support, just being with each other, or even in some cases, financial support, which can be really, really difficult to ask for because it can feel uncomfortable, embarrassing, those sorts of things. And on top of that, for basic things for mental health. Now, this might sound a bit crunchy, but I always advise people there should be at least one thing that you can do to take care of your mental health that you will not sacrifice. So it could be the smallest thing. It could be doing coloring books with your kids. It could be for going walks with the dog. It could be anything that just kind of takes the edge off of all of the things that we can't control. But make sure no matter what is going on around you, that you have at least one thing you do that just makes your mental health feel good, and do not sacrifice that, because there's a lot of other things we sacrifice when we get stressed for things like a shutdown.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. I also want to mention earlier what you said and how you articulated it so well, that when your basic needs aren't met, that impacts everything else. You're not able to focus on other things, which is what I want to touch on next, including food and folks that may or may not lose those SNAP benefits. When you lose something like that, that also has an impact on you because food is a basic need. So Melissa, how do you see that playing out on mental health if something like that happens where families lose their benefits and aren't able to meet those basic needs, where they're not able to possibly put food on the table for their kids?
Yeah. Food insecurity in honestly in many cases is so much even worse than financial insecurity. I Every person should have access to food and a hot meal, and there are millions of families who experience food insecurity. This is not something that a lot of people think about every day unless they are going through it. And it can be frightening's not even the word to experience food insecurity. And oftentimes asking for help from other people who may or may not also be experiencing food insecurity can be really, really difficult. And in those cases, when you don't have the finances to pay for it, you may even live in a food desert location, which there's so many of in the United States. What do you actually do? So the simple thing in my experience from what I have seen, again, is going to the power of community. That can be extraordinarily difficult, embarrassing, painful, uncomfortable to reach out to other people, again, who may or may not be experiencing the same issue. But in cases like that, when you really are having trouble putting food on the table, reaching out not just to family and friends, but hopefully also organizations that can provide that sort of assistance. Because, what else can you do in those circumstances?
Are you getting more requests from people or companies to help manage the stress from mental health and help people post shutdown?
Yes. So the most common requests I've been getting from both public and private sector is really focusing on practical stress management, not the crunchy wellness stuff that doesn't really impact us day to day. Also focusing on navigating uncertainty and ambiguity. And really in the past year, something I've been talking a lot about, which I wish more people were talking about, is the importance of building discomfort tolerance, not resilience, discomfort tolerance. Basically how we deal with scenarios like this when we cannot escape the things that are making us so uncomfortable. Basically, how do we function and not rip ourselves and other people to shreds? And so the organizations I've been speaking to have really been focusing on that alongside emotional regulation in times of volatility.
And you work with both the public and private sector. What mental health experiences have federal or furloughed workers shared with you during this time?
I've actually been messaging some of my contacts in the public sector when the shutdown was occurring, really just human to human, saying, are you okay? What's going on? Is there something I can do? Because they were experiencing, again, this shutdown completely out of their control. And what they were sharing with me was what I had mentioned earlier, really focusing on kind of a learned helplessness. Like there was nothing they could do to change the outcome. So a lot of them were reporting feelings of kind of numbness because they worry that this may happen again. And so the best thing that I could do, because I cannot change the outcome, I cannot change their circumstances, was really saying, how can I show up for you? What can I do? Because I know I can't change the situation. And a lot of them were saying that just being checked on was helpful.
And last question for you. What do you want to say to people that are struggling right now watching this? What's your message to them?
I know that it can feel really lonely and isolating and painful, but in a time when we are more connected than ever, a lot of us can feel pretty lonely. So don't hesitate to reach out to people. You are not burdening one another. We need each other more than ever right now. So if you have been impacted by the shutdown, you're still feeling an impact from the shutdown, please reach out to your community, to the people you know, because not only may they be experiencing something very similar, but one of the best ways to get through uncertainty is with the social connections that we have and that we need as human beings. So reach out to people. Do not go through this by yourself.
And I wanted to speak to you about the books that we're seeing behind you. Not really a question, but anything you want to say about the books, or what can we learn more? And where can we connect with you as well? I know we were speaking about connection. Maybe you have a Facebook page or an Instagram or a website.
Yeah. Absolutely. So my website is very difficult. It's melissadoman.com. People are welcome to reach out to me through there if they're looking for workplace mental health services for their organization. They're looking for, coaching services, anything like that. And I'm also findable on LinkedIn and on Instagram. It's at The Wandering Mel. And my books, I have my first book behind me. Yes, you can talk about mental health at work. Here's why and how to do it really well. My second book is coming out in February. It's titled Cornered Office, Why We Need to Talk About Leadership Mental Health, focusing on supporting leaders' mental health so they, can do better in the ways that we ask them to. And my core goal is to teach companies, leaders, and individuals how to have constructive conversations about mental health, communication, and team dynamics in the workplace. So I would love to hear from you.
Melissa, well, it was great speaking with you today, and we all learned more. And of course, the big message here is if you at home are struggling, there is help out there. And make sure you check out the resources that Melissa shared as well, including those books that were behind her. Again, Melissa, thank you. You did a great job giving us some